Welcome to my Improve Your Gut Health Masterclass. My name is Larissa, and in today's masterclass, what we'll cover is an intro to gut health, what it is, as well as the functional nutrition approach. Number two, your gut microbiome, what it is, why it matters for you, and how you can have a healthy one. Foods that harm and foods that heal your gut, and common mistakes that can harm your gut and put you at risk for disease, as well as dis-ease, and what to do instead. So first, just a little bit about me, if you don't know me. Again, my name is Larissa Pop. I am a certified holistic health coach, transformation coach, and functional nutrition counselor. And I'll be talking about what that is in the next slide. I'm also a passionate gut health advocate, world traveler, and picky eater turned veggie and global food lover. And I share that just to let you know that I have not always eaten as healthy as I do and loved eating vegetables as much as I do, but I really do now enjoy the foods that I eat, as well as choosing them because I know they serve my body. And I love helping both men and women resolve the root causes of their digestive pain and other health concerns through functional nutrition and transformational coaching, so they can feel better, prevent disease, and live life more fully. What is functional nutrition? Functional nutrition is the intersection between functional medicine and nutrition coaching. So it's based on root cause resolution. So that means it's about finding what's the underlying root cause of dysfunction in the body, rather than just suppressing symptoms, which is the conventional, most common approach in medicine today, just giving a pill for an ill, rather than really asking, why does someone have this symptom? Like, why do they constantly have bloating, gas, indigestion? Why do they have migraines? Why do they have this autoimmune condition or cancer? What's the underlying root cause or causes? And in functional nutrition, there's a model that looks at three main root causes that contribute to any dysfunction, disease, dis-ease in the body. And one of those main roots that always must be addressed is gut health. So it's looking at our digestive function as well as the health of our gut microbiome. And then functional nutrition is also based on this new understanding that we are all unique and all systems in the human body are connected, versus a one-size-fits-all protocol and looking at organs and disease in isolation. So it's really embracing this concept of bioindividuality and finding out what's true for the individual and then helping them to get better. And of course, I need to share a disclaimer. This is not medical advice, so I am providing education, not medical advice. But again, if you're on any medication, please consult your doctor before making any significant changes in your diet or taking any natural supplements. All right, let's dive in. So what is gut health? Gut health has kind of I see it as having two components. One is the function of your GI tract, also referred to as your gastrointestinal system, your digestive system. And that's really looking at the actual functionality of the digestive function. So that starts with our mouth and, how much we're actually chewing our food, producing saliva to break it down. And then we look at, it gets down to the stomach. And are we producing enough acid in the stomach? Are we secreting enough enzymes? And then in the intestines, the small and large intestines, are they working properly? For example, in a lot of people now, they have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or even small intestinal fungal overgrowth. And so there's a lot of different things along the digestive system. It's this 20 to 30 foot tube, which if any part of the digestive system is not functioning properly, then it's going to affect other parts of the system and then ultimately other components, other systems in our body. And number two, when it comes to gut health, the second component is really looking at the function and balance of your gut microbiome. And that's all the microbes that live in your gastrointestinal tract. And mainly, the majority are living in your colon, your large intestine. And of course, there's also a relation between these two things, that the health of our gut microbiome influences the functionality of our digestion and vice versa. So for this masterclass, I'm going to be focusing on the gut microbiome. What is the gut microbiome? So it's basically, it consists of trillions of bacteria, viruses, fungi that live in our digestive tract, but mostly bacteria, both good and bad. And there are about 5 to 10 million genes in the microbiome. So we are literally like 99% microbes and only 1% human when we think about that. And our microbiome is unique to us. So it's like a fingerprint, even more unique than a fingerprint. Yes, it gets passed down from our mother, and then it's influenced by our environment as we grow up, but it really becomes completely unique to us. So why does our gut microbiome matter? So you might already have some general understanding, but a lot of people don't realize just how much it influences our entire body. I mean, if there's one thing that you can do to improve your health, it is to optimize the health of your gut microbiome. So it's our second brain. We have more than 500 million nerves in our GI system, and there's like a direct link. So we have this vagus nerve that connects the brain to the gut, and they communicate in both directions. And we actually produce up to 70% of serotonin in the gut. That's why when we also address gut health, it's going to affect our mood and our cognitive function. And also our brain, such as stress and other changes in our thoughts, are going to actually affect the function of our gut. So it literally affects how we both think and feel. Almost every disease or symptom can be linked back to gut dysbiosis. Gut dysbiosis means the imbalance of the good and the bad bacteria and microbes. Also, our gut is home to 80% of our immune system. 70 to 80% of our immune system resides in the lining of our gut. And so when we improve our gut microbiome health, then we are also improving our immune function. Something super important for all of us right now. And then it's also the key to anti-aging, beautiful skin, weight loss. So I know this is something that a lot of people, especially women, care about. And there's a lot of interesting science going on, research about the link to weight loss. And there's a few different mechanisms. For example, one is we know that our gut microbiome influences the two main hormones that influence hunger and satiety, leptin and ghrelin, and that when we have gut dysbiosis, often there's dysfunction in those hormones. And so we are often feeling hungry all the time and not having that satiety signal be triggered on by leptin. But another thing is we see that it's just the composition of our gut microbiome has a great influence on fat deposition, that when it's in dysbiosis, we're actually going to store more fat. And when we have a healthy microbiome, we're much more easily going to lose weight. There's actually been interesting studies where they took twin mice and they basically wiped out their microbiomes and then gave them fecal transplants for two new microbiomes, where one was gut dysbiosis and another was a healthy microbiome. And the mouse with the healthy microbiome actually had, maintained a normal weight. And the one that was given the unhealthy microbiome became obese. And then when they put them together, suddenly the obese mouse lost weight, because I guess I learned recently that mice eat each other's fecal matter. And so in that way, they were sharing microbiome. And so the obese mouse was then receiving the healthy microbiome, and then without changing what they were feeding the mice, lost weight. So if you care about weight loss, this is another reason to focus on gut health. It really could be the missing link if you've tried so many different diets and are just tired of calorie restriction, which is not the right way to go. Then definitely optimizing your gut microbiome is going to help with everything. I mean, even the next point affects your energy production. So if you have low energy, I mean, literally any disease or dis-ease in the body, if you are not looking and feeling your best, then you definitely want to make sure you've optimized your microbiome health. All right, let me have a drink. So how can you have a healthy gut microbiome? So what is a healthy gut microbiome? So basically a healthy gut microbiome is one that is diverse. It has a lot of different bacteria. So it's not effective in most cases to take a probiotic pill because you might be getting like 50 billion units of probiotics, but it's just a few strains. And we don't want to just encourage the proliferation of just a few strains. We want a diverse microbiome of healthy bacteria with more good than bad. And so it's not about wiping out all the bad bacteria. It's just about making sure that we have more good than bad bacteria. And some are just commensal. They just are neither good nor bad. Diet is the number one thing that we can do to nourish our gut microbiome. Of course, sleep, stress, our environment, exercise are also important. And some of these might be more important for you if you already have a relatively healthy diet based on what I'm going to share in the next slide. Then what might be most important for you right now to optimize your gut microbiome could be addressing stress, moving your body more, looking at your environment or your sleep. But we're going to focus on diet for the purpose of this masterclass. And before I go into talking about what foods help to heal your gut microbiome, I want to talk about what disrupts the microbiome. So all types of medications and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, so aspirin, ibuprofen, especially antibiotics, because they're not just going to wipe out the bad bacteria, they're also going to wipe out a lot of good bacteria. There are times to be used. It's just in today's healthcare system, they are very much overprescribed and misused. And so be very cautious about when you're choosing to use antibiotics. But of course, use it if it's really necessary, knowing that they're, again, it's not going to totally decimate your good bacteria. And then if you then follow the advice that I'll be sharing about diet after your antibiotic treatment, then you can replenish and regrow your gut microbiome. But for those of you that might have been on multiple treatments of antibiotics, then again, you really need to look at what's the underlying root cause. What's the reason that you continue to need antibiotics? For example, if you constantly have, UTIs, if you're a woman, then really you need to figure out what's causing that rather than just constantly relying on antibiotics. And it's the gut microbiome that needs to be optimized. Other things, birth control, acid blockers. So acid blockers, antacids are huge. If you have heartburn, acid reflux, the majority of people actually have low stomach acid. And so if you're experiencing heartburn or acid reflux, you should not be staying on an acid blocker. Like they're meant to be used short term, like no more than 6 weeks in acute cases for ulcers, but they were never meant to be used long term, and they can have detrimental effects, not just for your gut microbiome, but for a lot of other reasons, because they also inhibit the absorption of key nutrients. And laxatives, so that's another one. Again, if you have constipation, you're relying on laxatives, then it's going to make it harder for you to actually, the longer you're on these medications, the harder it is to come off of them. And we really don't want to rely on these. We want to, again, address the underlying root cause, why you're constipated. And actually, I'll be sharing with you a really useful constipation guide, because this is the number one thing. Like when I work with clients, I always start by addressing bowel regularity. So if there's constipation or diarrhea, we want to look at what's going on, because a lot of cases, diarrhea is actually also constipation. So this is something critical. If you are not having daily bowel movements 1 to 3 times a day, normal like formation like a snake, then you are likely constipated, and it's the first step that you want to address to optimize your gut microbiome. And especially if you're bloated or have a lot of gas, we know that in a lot of cases, bloating and gas is because of constipation. And then antidepressants. So again, okay in acute cases, but not meant to be used long-term. And we know that when we optimize the gut microbiome, we optimize the brain, our mood. And so a lot of people have been like chronically depressed when we optimize their gut microbiome. I mean, in the research and in clinical practice, they've shown that suddenly their depression goes away. Because again, we have this direct link through the vagus nerve between our brain and our gut. So it's really powerful. And then chronic inflammation, which comes from so many things, like all of our lifestyle factors, you know, stress, toxins, infection, poor diet, lack of quality sleep, movement. And so again, it really is looking at holistically our health, you know, and that's what it means when I say I'm a holistic health coach. It means that, yes, I specialize in, you know, functional nutrition, but in order to help someone really optimize their health and heal, it takes a holistic approach, looking at all of the factors that influence inflammation and influence the health of our body. All right, then eating foods you have a sensitivity or intolerance to, and perhaps not know it. So the big ones are dairy and gluten. So this is a bigger topic than I have time to get into right now, but just to really quickly explain why dairy and gluten. So it's been shown through lots of studies that both of these contribute to inflammation in the body. So for anyone, you should at least reduce these in your diet and make sure you're choosing high quality dairy products, high quality gluten containing products. And when I say high quality, it means like organic, as minimally processed as possible, without added sugars, etc. Also, the reason that dairy and gluten are a problem is that for a lot of people, they have difficulty digesting them. So that's where we talk about intolerance, is that there's difficulty to digest these proteins. Like gluten is a protein found in wheat and other grains like barley. And so I always encourage individuals, like if you are not feeling your best, whether it's you're having digestive symptoms, whether you're having any other disease or dis-ease in the body, even like low energy, brain fog, definitely try an elimination diet. And so not diet in the traditional sense of restricting yourself, but just eliminate gluten and dairy for at least 3 weeks. For gluten, ideally up to a month. I mean, even for some individuals, it can take up to 3 months to really see the difference. But for a lot of people, just 1 week of eliminating these, you're going to notice a difference if you have a sensitivity or intolerance to that protein. Like in dairy, it's whey or casein. Some people have sensitivity or intolerance to both. So with dairy, most people think about lactose intolerance, which is difficulty digesting the lactose, the sugar in the dairy, but other people actually have difficulty digesting the whey or the casein protein in dairy. So they're two different issues. And so ultimately there's tests out there, but they're not 100% accurate. They can be expensive if you get the ones that are actually more accurate. And so just doing a simple elimination diet is the easiest thing, but I just say, try it, just try it. Because I've had people like recently, I had a group go through my seasonal cleanse, and they did just 1 week, which eliminated common foods that commonly are, harder for people to digest. And so that included elimination of dairy and gluten. And afterwards, when they introduced them again, they really realized that, oh, when I eat gluten, like so many people say this, when I eat gluten, I realize that it makes me feel tired. And that's like, for me, the one thing I notice is that when I eat a lot of gluten-containing foods, I feel more tired, and so I choose to avoid it. But if you do choose to keep it in your diet, the best option is like an organic sourdough, because sourdough, they use a probiotic culture. You're not getting probiotics because it's been cooked. It will kill them. But they basically pre-digest the gluten and make it easier to digest, because the variety of wheat that we're eating today is very different from the original variety of wheat. It's been modified so that we have higher yields of wheat, but it means that it's much higher in gluten and it's become pest resistant. And so it just became something that's harder for us to digest. So yeah, you could consume ancient grains like spelt and others and may be okay with that. So it's really about experimenting and seeing what's true for you. But I say just experiment. If you're, not feeling your best, then it's something that really could help. And I mean, dairy too, both of these, if you're constipated even, just give it a try. I highly recommend experimenting. But for other people, food sensitivities that are common can be eggs, soy, and then there's ones that are unique to the individual that might be like a very generally healthy food like blueberries or spinach, but just for that individual, they're creating issues. And then there can become a longer list. So like when you're having issues with one food and you don't optimize and address your gut health, then you can end up with more food sensitivities. And it doesn't mean for the rest of your life you follow like a low FODMAP diet, which I'll talk about later, but you really are going to be able to consume a lot of those foods again once you heal your gut. However, gluten and dairy are two that for most people, like if they're having issues with digestion or just like energy levels, constipation, definitely try eliminating them. So I just wanted to give time to that because it's such a big topic that people have questions about. And there's more to it than that. I mean, with dairy, for example, it's also about the fact that, the milk is meant for growing this small baby calf into a huge animal. So it's not meant for humans, literally. Like, that's why a lot of people will do better on sheep's milk, because that milk, they say, is more similar to human milk. But ultimately, like personally, also, I don't consume dairy, very occasionally, and same with gluten. So next, what else disrupts the gut microbiome? A diet low in fiber and very high in saturated fat. And this is why I'll be talking about the importance of increasing fiber through plant foods and reducing animal foods. But also, of course, we just want to clean up our diet. Like if we're consuming processed foods, too much sugar, refined carbohydrates, these things feed the bad bacteria. And then those bad bacteria create harmful substances. And large amounts of animal products, especially red meat, eggs, and dairy, are going to disrupt the microbiome, especially in the absence of fiber. And especially when our digestive function isn't working properly. So if someone is consuming a lot of fiber and their digestive function is working properly, then they could be fine with consuming animal products. But if you have any signs of digestive function that is not working effectively and you're not consuming a lot of fiber, then definitely you need to look at how much animal products you're consuming. And then of course, quality, again, ideally organic from grass-fed animals. I mean, I'm not about like being so strict all the time, but looking like what you're eating most of the time and what you have control over, and just aiming to make small improvements step by step. All right. Another sip of water. I just realized I haven't mentioned anything about water, but anytime I do a presentation, I always want to give a reminder that water is so important, because I can't tell you how many people I talk to that don't drink enough water. And it's actually one of the top nutrients that we need for digestion. So actually for digestion, we need water. And then of course, if you're constipated, one of the first things to do is start drinking more water, just to get things moving and flush out all those toxins and waste products. All right. So the number one thing that can help you to optimize your gut microbiome is to eat a whole food, plant-based diet rich in diversity. So again, this doesn't mean it has to be 100% plant-based, but you should aim for up to 90% plant-based, which is what I do. I'll eat a little bit of fish, some high quality animal products, meaning like raised naturally, because again, I forgot to mention this, but with antibiotics, a lot of the antibiotics that are disrupting our microbiome aren't even coming from actually like prescription for us, but they were used in raising the animals, and not just to prevent infection, but now like in some feedlots, they're giving antibiotics just to like beef up the cows more quickly. And that's again why you want to be careful if you're choosing animal products about the quality of them, so you're not then getting extra antibiotics through the animal products that you're consuming. But basically whole food, plant-based diet. So like making sure that every meal you have, the majority of the meal, like 3/4 of your plate at least, is plant foods. And this is fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans and lentils, whole grains. So these are all healthy. A lot of people now are afraid of fruit. Don't be afraid of fruit. Again, this is general information. For your unique case, you know, there might be a reason to limit fruit, but generally it's not a bad food. And so that's why, again, I'm providing education here. But if you have a unique situation and you'd like more guidance, like I would need to actually collect a full health history and gather a lot more information to be able to provide targeted, individualized guidance for you. But generally, these foods are healthy. And even if you choose not to eat grains and you want to follow a paleo diet, that's fine. But again, make sure that you're consuming a lot of plant foods. That's where we get fiber. We don't get fiber from any animal products. Meat, fish, eggs, dairy, zero fiber. And fiber, as you'll soon learn, is the food for our microbiome. So fiber feeds the good bacteria. All right, second thing, make sure that you're pooping at least 1 to 3 times a day. So I already talked about this. I guess I got ahead of myself. This must come first. So again, please start with reviewing the guidance that I'll share in my constipation guide, but there's a few things I say to start with. 1, flaxseed is really helpful, flax and or chia, or both, having like 1 tablespoon in the morning mixed with water or smoothie and 1 tablespoon in the evening. It should be ground flaxseed. Or if you're using chia seeds, let them sit for at least an hour in the water and then drink it. But flaxseed also has so many other benefits. So I definitely always advise people, especially women, to have at least 1 to 2 tablespoons of flaxseed every day, because for women, it also helps to excrete excess estrogen from our body, which helps to reduce our risk of breast, ovarian, uterine cancers. But also for men, can also reduce risk of prostate cancer. So definitely increase your water intake, add in flax and chia, and those 2 things alone are going to help a lot. But then the third thing to look at is taking some magnesium citrate, like Magnesium Calm is a popular brand, but magnesium can really help as well to get things moving. Next, reduce stress. So again, this is really, really, really important. And I'll just share a quick story about stress. I mean, generally, I think we all are aware that when you're stressed and you eat, oftentimes you end up having a bit of a tummy ache. That's why before I eat, I always take a break. And my husband now, we do this together. We sit and we take 3 to 5 deep breaths. I mean, deep diaphragmatic belly breaths. So you're breathing in your nose, so your belly will expand, and then out your mouth. I like to do a count of 4, 7, 8. Some people do like 5, 5, 7. The point is that your exhale should be longer than your inhale. And so and simply breathing is so, so powerful. And what this is doing is it's switching us from our sympathetic fight or flight nervous system to the parasympathetic rest and digest. And even, again, because I know people really care about weight loss, there was one functional medicine doctor, he shared that he had a patient that came in and he was helping her with weight loss. She really wanted to lose, or I think it was a nutritionist. He said she had really had a healthy diet. She was exercising a lot, but she just had these last 5 kilos that she couldn't get rid of. And finally he asked her, do you have a lot of stress in your life? And she said, yeah, I do. He said, okay, when do you get the most stressed? She said, when I'm preparing dinner. You know, I have 3 kids and it's very stressful. So by the time I sit down, I almost don't even have an appetite. So he said, okay, all I want you to do is while you're preparing dinner, while you're stirring the pots, I want you to breathe. Practice this deep diaphragmatic breathing while you're stirring the pots and preparing dinner. And so that's all she changed. And within the first week of doing that, she lost 2 kilos. And then shortly after lost all 5 to reach her normal ideal weight. And so that's just to demonstrate how powerful simply breathing is. Because a lot of people know stress is bad and then they think, oh my gosh, I don't have time to meditate or do yoga, blah, blah, blah. But literally just focusing on breathing can make a huge difference. Okay, what else to optimize your gut microbiome? Reduce exposure to toxins as much as possible. So, as much as possible, choosing organic produce. Like if you're in the US, there's the EWG's Dirty Dozen list, which includes the 12 fruits and vegetables that they use the most pesticides on, which is updated each year. And they also have a Clean 15 list. But, I've lived abroad like in Iraq the last 4 years and now Turkey, where you don't have the luxury of choosing organic. So I found that based on research, the most effective and cost-effective option is I soak my produce in a baking soda solution. So I think it's 1 teaspoon to every 2 cups of water and soak for 15 minutes. Alcohol. So alcohol is something, really in the US and so many countries, it's become just a normal part of the culture that it's seen as normal. It's kind of, people forget that it really is a toxin and it is really, really disruptive to your gut microbiome. Because imagine you have a cut, you go and you get some alcohol to prevent infection and, kill any bad bacteria. Well, imagine what that alcohol is doing to the bacteria in your gut. So, okay, if you want to continue drinking, that's fine. Red wine is going to be your best option, but it's really then about drinking in moderation and not to excess. Of course, tobacco is also bad. As I mentioned, unnecessary medications and certain long-term use. And sometimes even using too many supplements or poor quality supplements. So really just being aware of those toxins in your environment that you can control. This is also looking at safer beauty care products, whether it's makeup, lotion, shampoo, body soap, perfume, just eliminating things that have toxic chemicals. Getting out in nature. So I'm going to be talking about how we'll get good bacteria through our food, but we also get these good bacteria from our environment. So when we get out in nature, there's one prominent doctor who does a lot of research in gut health, Dr. Zach Bush, and he said he now prescribes to his patients to actually, one weekend go to the beach, another weekend to the swamp, another to the mountains. And actually he can do this because where he lives there, you can make day trips to these different ecosystems, and then you're going to be exposed to different microorganisms. So literally just getting out in nature, touching, hug a tree, touch the earth, and great if you could take off your shoes, because there's also benefits just from earthing and actually touching the ground, breathing in the natural air and the microbes. It is also equally powerful. So all of these are really great. Improve your sleep. Also, we know that the quality of our sleep also affects our gut health, and movement is a big one as well. When it comes to diet, there are 3 P's that I want you to remember for feeding your microbiome: probiotics, prebiotics, and polyphenols. So probiotics, most people already know about probiotics, but most commonly they just think about yogurt. And yogurt can be fine if you've tried eliminating dairy and you notice that it's not really a problem for you and you want to continue consuming yogurt. That can be like, again, a better, when I say like the quality of dairy you consume, yogurt's going to be a better quality option than cheese or just milk, because it is fermented. You'll get some probiotics, but you're not getting a lot. And remember, diversity is the key. And also, if you're having any disease or dis-ease in the body, you want to reduce inflammation. And so dairy is something that contributes to inflammation. So for healthy individuals, sure, they could consume yogurt, but others, I mean, now, like even if we look at if you're familiar with the blue zones, which is the 5 areas in the world they studied where they have the longest living populations, a lot of people living over the age of 100 and they're really healthy. And so even when they consume dairy, for example, with yogurt, they're not consuming large amounts and they're consuming a lot of times goat's milk yogurt, which is going to be easier to digest and thus less inflammatory. But in all these different cultures, they also have different types of fermented vegetables. And so sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, which I love, having lived in Japan, lacto-fermented pickles, so fermented without the use of vinegar, and kefir. So kefir is kind of like a more fermented yogurt drink that is actually higher in probiotics, has more probiotics than yogurt, and even apple cider vinegar, raw apple cider vinegar. And of course, any of these, if you cook them, I think it's like above 115 degrees Fahrenheit or something, then you actually kill the beneficial probiotics. So like with miso, for example, it's used in soup in Japan, but they cook all of the other ingredients in the soup, they turn off the heat and they add the miso last. And so it's important to consume a variety of these different raw fermented foods. Even with sauerkraut, for example, in the US now, they have a lot of great companies. Like I just tried a few new ones the other day since I'm home visiting. There's delicious like ginger carrot. There's another that was with green cabbage, I think turmeric, cumin seeds, jalapeno, and then a traditional, which is green cabbage and caraway seeds. I mean, there's so many different ones, beets. So each different vegetable, once it's fermented, is going to create different strains of probiotics, good bacteria. And we can't like study and know exactly what's the microbiotic content of these different ones, but we know like that when I say we, it's just generally like research has shown that consuming a variety of different fermented foods is going to give you way more probiotics than you're going to get from a little pill. And so I personally always recommend, and this is what I've learned, to have a few different types, in your refrigerator and then rotate. So with the sauerkraut, it can be very salty, but you're just having a small amount, literally like 1 forkful a day. And so like one day I'll have a forkful of the carrot, ginger, another day I'll have a forkful of the cabbage, another day the fermented beets. And you can really easily make these at home very cheaply if you don't live somewhere that they're available. Again, just make sure that you're buying ones that are raw, not heated or pasteurized. So probiotics are the microbes with beneficial qualities. So it's not just they're healthy bacteria, and they confer benefits in our body. Then prebiotics are what feed the probiotics, because if we don't feed them, they're going to die off. And so they're the food for our healthy gut microbes, and it includes mostly soluble fibers found in lots of different plant foods. Like in the picture, you see these are some of the foods highest in prebiotic fiber, like asparagus, leeks, onion, garlic, green plantains. These are green plantain chips that you see. And so many others. I literally just Google prebiotic rich foods and print out a list. And generally, you're going to get enough just by eating diversity of plants, but also not just from plant fiber, but also from resistant starch. We're getting prebiotics, or resistant starch is another category of prebiotics. Resistant starches are found most commonly in tubers, like also legumes. And so another thing to do is, so eat a diversity of different plant foods, but also include at least one root vegetable each day. Don't just stick to sweet potatoes, but try different types of root vegetables that you find in your local market. And one little trick I always like to share, since so many people love rice as well as white potatoes. So when you actually cook and then cool white rice, white potatoes, as well as pasta, though I don't recommend that since it has gluten. But when you cook and cool the white rice and white potatoes, it actually changes the structure of the starch and makes it what we call resistant starch, because it resists digestion in the small intestine, and then it arrives to the large intestine and becomes food for our probiotics. And so this would mean, like, you cook a batch of rice or white potatoes, leave it overnight in the refrigerator, and then consume it chilled. So they say that you could heat it up to a maximum of, I think it's 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Above that, then it's going to start to like break down, I guess, that resistant starch structure. So it will no longer give you the same benefit. And again, if you're interested in losing weight, there's been studies that have shown that also by doing this, people lost weight, because since it's resisting digestion in the small intestine, it's not getting broken down as much, and you're not then going to end up spiking your blood sugar and your insulin and have it deposited as fat in your body when you're consuming in excess. So that's a little trick I like to share. Not that these foods are very nutrient dense, and I don't encourage to make them like a huge part of your diet, but I know in a lot of countries that like it's a staple, and so it's fine. But again, not having like, I lived in Iraq for a number of years where, they have a huge plate of white rice, and if they have vegetables, it's like a tiny salad or a little thing of soup. But changing that, having like a smaller portion of rice and a larger portion of the vegetables. And the third P, polyphenols. So polyphenols, these are types of antioxidant compounds which have also positive effects on gut microbes. And we already know about these in terms of the common ones like berries, pomegranates. Pomegranates really, really good for the gut, actually. Dark purple grapes, beets, anything really bright in color, and especially like dark in color all the way through. So not like a radish where the radish is just red on the outside but white on the inside, but something like a beet where it's darkly pigmented through the whole thing. But, even you can find other ones like, now they have like purple sweet potatoes, purple carrots. So these all like just that rich, dark purple color, so good. Also cacao or dark chocolate is also a good polyphenol, very high in antioxidants. Green and black tea, especially green tea, but also black tea and apples, but then there's others as well. So trying to consume at least one of these polyphenol-rich foods every single day and as much as possible. We know that they have many other benefits for our overall health. And then throwing in another P, but this one isn't one that you're consuming. So postbiotics are the health-promoting compounds produced by our good gut microbes when they feed on prebiotics. So essentially, the prebiotics are the food for the probiotics, and they create postbiotics. And then this, like the postbiotics, the most talked about one right now, being studied a lot, is what's called short chain fatty acids. And so this is really seen now as being one of the most healing nutrients that we can have for our body. And so there's three types of short chain fatty acids: acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And butyrate is especially really amazing because it can actually bypass the blood-brain barrier, and not a lot of things can. So that means it can actually enter our brain and enhance cognitive function, which is really powerful. But these short chain fatty acids essentially go throughout our body and really affect so many different systems and functions in our body in positive ways. Short-chain fatty acids also help to correct dysbiosis, that imbalance of the good and bad bacteria, help to fix leaky gut. I didn't have a chance to talk about this, but you might have heard about leaky gut. If not, actually, this is one of the reasons that gluten is such a problem, is that gluten has been shown, especially the variety of wheat, gluten-containing products that we eat today, to contribute to intestinal permeability. So essentially our gut lining, you know, there's some permeability where obviously once food is fully broken down into its individual components, like protein breaks down into amino acids, those go through the gut lining into the bloodstream so they can go throughout the body to our cells. But certain foods like processed foods, unhealthy foods, as well as gluten are shown to enhance the permeability and then create what's called this leaky gut. So then it's like the holes are bigger, and then we have like, you know, food intolerance, so we can't properly digest certain proteins. So then we have these big undigested pieces of food that get through our gut lining and shouldn't, and then that's when we leads to autoimmunity because it's tagged as a foreign invader, since our body doesn't recognize that larger piece of undigested food that makes it into our bloodstream. And that's when we see autoimmunity, which is, you know, there's over 100 different types of autoimmune conditions now, and it's just on the rise. So we know that leaky gut is something that has to be present in order for autoimmunity to express itself. Like, yes, we have a gene for autoimmunity. Like my dad has both now been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and Hashimoto's and arthritis. These are all autoimmune conditions. Once you have one, you're more likely to get another if you're not addressing the underlying root cause. So personally, like I know that I have a gene for these, but it doesn't have to be switched on. And one of the things that I know would switch it on is having a leaky gut. So this is another motivation for me just to avoid gluten, even though it doesn't cause me any like serious noticeable symptoms, rather than just if I have a lot of it, I feel like more tired. But also cancer, like helping to prevent cancer. So also for me personally, like pancreatic cancer runs in my family. It's a more aggressive form of cancer, but now there's interesting research that's showing even for that type of cancer, having a healthy gut microbiome can greatly reduce your risk. And so there's just so many incredible benefits that we get from having these short chain fatty acids, which again come from feeding our good bacteria. So taking in probiotics from different fermented foods and feeding them lots of different fibers and resistant starch from a diverse diet of plant foods. And then inflammation, we also know that inflammation contributes to like disease in the body as well as joint pain, etc. And this will be reduced by short chain fatty acids. Improving blood sugar regulation, so helps to prevent or even reverse diabetes, helps with, as I said, suppressing fat accumulation, improving cognition. So literally, again, so many benefits these short chain fatty acids have. They're incredible. Really, really fascinating. And we don't even know like what we know right now, again, through the research that's out there is so little compared to what we're going to know in a few years, and imagine like 10, 20 years, because again, we have trillions of microorganisms in us. So it's not so easy to figure out exactly how they're working. But we do know that feeding them lots of plant fiber is something they love. And regular consumption of fiber also trains your gut microbiome not only to process fiber, but to actually get even more beneficial postbiotics out of it. So when I say it trains your microbiome to process fiber. So for example, if people have trouble with beans, like, yeah, initially you might have difficulty when you eat beans or like, let's say a new food. Like this happened for me when I moved to Iraq and I had Jerusalem artichokes, which are really, really high. I learned like they're almost, number one is chicory root, which nobody eats. They use it for some teas or other things. But then the second most, the second vegetable that's richest in prebiotic fiber is Jerusalem artichoke, or in the US, we also call it sunchokes. And it's like 67% fiber, very high. I didn't know this. In Iraq, they use it in pickles. And so even being consumed in that way, oh my gosh, I've never experienced so much burping and bloating in my life. The first time I had it for like a couple meals while I was visiting my in-laws. So my husband is Kurdish from Iraq. And so his mom traditionally makes these pickles that include this Jerusalem artichoke. And I just thought, okay, that's the only new thing that I introduced. So it must be what's causing all of this like gas. And I just stopped eating it. But then, I'm the type of person who's really curious. So after a couple weeks, I think because his mom also was always insisting, why don't you eat the tertiat? And finally I said, let me try, let's just see, is it that or was it something else? And that time I ate it and I was completely fine. And then I continued to eat it. And now I could have like a big thing of these Jerusalem artichokes and have no problem. And it's because what I've learned is it was something new to my body and it was very high in fiber. And so I had to feed those specific bacteria that break down that type of fiber, because there's specific bacteria for specific types of vegetables, like different fibers, because it's not as simple as just saying there's soluble and insoluble fiber. There's so many different types of fibers in each vegetable. And our probiotics, our good bacteria, actually have digestive enzymes to help break them down. So once I started feeding those bacteria that can break down the Jerusalem artichoke, then they started to populate. And so that's where here I talk about training your gut microbiome to better process certain different fibers. So when you're introducing new foods, like me, especially when you go abroad to a different country, like slowly add in new foods so that you give a chance for your gut microbiome to be able to process those new types of fiber, as well as like if you're switching from a predominantly animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, do it very gradually. And I'll talk more about that soon. But also then we're actually able to get even more beneficial postbiotics out of our fiber, out of our food, the more that we're consuming them. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation, please remember this. The golden rule is to have diversity of plants in your diet. Yes, we want to have an abundance of plants, and things like broccoli are great, and spinach, again, for most people. But diversity is most important. We don't want to just eat the same few, like we don't want to just eat broccoli and spinach and carrots every single day. We want to have all different types of plants in our diet. And that's why I say, as you do that, gradually add them in. But when you go shopping, always look for something new. I mean, as much as possible, shop seasonally. So with each season, there's going to be new diversity that comes, and enjoy all of that. And there's been a study that has shown that having at least 30 different plant foods a week will confer benefit for your microbiome. And so they had like looked at a study, I forget how many people were in the study, but those that were consuming at least 30 different plant foods like had the healthiest gut microbiome. And so again, lots of fruits and vegetables, but also nuts, seeds, legumes, lentils, whole grains. And you could also, just try out a challenge for 1 week, track how many different ones you consume. And it's actually like, I mean, for me, I get 30 in a day a lot of times. But for a lot of people, like you might only be eating 10 different ones in a week. Also, spices count. If you're having a lot, not like a pinch of turmeric, but if you have a good amount of spices that you use in your cooking, whether it's like ginger, turmeric, cumin, chili pepper, all of these, but also like amazing. I mean, they're high in antioxidants and other nutrients, but also, again, they're part of that diversity. So enjoy your spices too. All right. Lastly, I want to just talk about a few common mistakes, which some of them I've already started getting into, that many people are making, whether you're someone who is experiencing digestive issues or you're not. Like, making these mistakes is going to harm your gut microbiome. The first is increasing your fiber intake too quickly. So, well, this won't necessarily harm your gut microbiome, but it will if this causes you to stop eating those foods. And that's what a lot of people do. Like, they want to go on a plant-based diet because they heard about all the health benefits of a plant-based diet, but they just like overnight switch from 5 grams of fiber to 30 or 40 grams of fiber, and their body's like, whoa. And so I want to share a quick analogy that hopefully will help you to remember this point. So imagine a factory. You have a factory with workers. So the workers are like your probiotics, your good bacteria. Let's say this is a car factory. So we're producing cars. So raw material comes into the factory and then is processed to make cars. The raw material is like our prebiotic fiber. So that's coming in, and then we have workers to process it. And as long as we have, as long as the influx of the raw material is balanced by the number of workers there to actually, process that raw material, then we'll end up with proper output, that our product, our cars are functioning properly, etc. But let's imagine that because of different things, we start having less workers, like they get sick, they're laid off. So this can be things like, when we're talking about probiotics as our workers, it could be things like due to antibiotics, past surgeries, and so many other things that we talked about, medications. So suddenly we don't have enough workers. And if we suddenly increase the amount of raw materials coming in, all of the parts for the car, which is our prebiotic fiber, because we suddenly want to eat lots and lots of plant foods, we don't have enough workers to process those. So they're doing their best, but ultimately they end up with faulty cars. Some that are their brakes don't work, they're missing a door, and people start driving them and having accidents, and it just creates all kinds of problems. So same thing, if we don't have enough of our workers or probiotics and we suddenly increase the prebiotics, things aren't going to work right. So slowly increase the amount of fiber-rich vegetables that you're having in your diet, little by little increase them. And generally, if you do want to try out tracking for a short period, I say even just one day, I use an app called Chronometer with a C. It's free. And you can just put in everything you ate for a day, just to see how much fiber you consumed. And that you can have that as a starting point, and then, slowly add in little by little. And then from time to time, try tracking again and seeing, how much you're at, where I think for women, at least, the recommendation, the general US dietary guidelines, is 25 grams of fiber at a minimum, which majority of people are not getting. But it's actually better to have up to 40 grams of fiber a day, at least. There are no gassy foods, only gassy people. So this is a big mistake, is avoiding foods that make you gassy, just thinking they're gassy foods like beans. As I said, it's all about just creating a healthy gut microbiome where you have the proper bacteria to digest those foods. And so that's where you just have to slowly increase your amount, so you can slowly increase the amount of good guys. But then also looking at if you have a lot of gut issues, and the next point, number 3, start talking about low FODMAP. So if you don't know what low FODMAP is, it's a diet that's used for people that often have a lot of digestive issues with chronic bloating and gas and stomach pain. And so it eliminates a lot of healthy plant foods, but it is not meant to be used long-term, longer than 4 weeks. I mean, up to 6, but really not longer than 4 weeks is recommended. It's to basically, eliminate all these foods that are causing issues because you have leaky gut, because you have gut dysbiosis, you can't properly digest and break them down. Then fixing, repairing what's not working, optimizing your gut health so that you fix that dysbiosis, fix leaky gut, and then you can slowly start to add back in those foods again, but slowly is the key, so that then your body can adapt and you can have enough of the good bacteria that help to digest those foods. But staying on these restrictive diets, also keto for long-term, can be really detrimental to your gut health. They might have short-term gains, keto can help you lose weight really quickly, but for most people, they're not following it in a way that it's supporting their gut health, because if you just get fiber from a supplement, it's not the same as getting it from a diversity of plant foods. So really be careful about following any of these bad diets long term. Again, just a whole foods, plant-based diet with high quality foods. Like if you want animal products, you know, high quality, but not excessive amounts, especially not a lot of foods rich, animal foods rich in saturated fat. So next mistake, not consuming enough fiber. So I already said this. Yeah, people might think, oh, I'm taking a fiber supplement, I'm okay. No, first of all, be careful the fiber supplement you're taking doesn't have some artificial sweeteners, artificial coloring, or additives that are harmful. But it can be fine to take a fiber supplement as long as you're also consuming a lot of different plant foods and getting fiber from your diet as well. Like, for example, if you're having issues with constipation, yeah, you might do well with a fiber supplement, like some psyllium husk or something, to help get things moving. But don't rely on fiber supplements alone. But taking probiotic pills. So again, I started talking about this earlier, where probiotic pills, yes, you're going to get like 50 billion units of these probiotics, but it's just a few strains. And we don't want to create a monoculture. We want a diverse ecosystem in our microbiome. And so for certain people, again, with digestive issues or other dysfunction in their body, if you work with a qualified like functional medicine doctor, nutritionist, or if you were to work with me, then you would be able to know, like you could be advised on whether it's right for you to take a product pill and what's the right kind. That's the thing. A lot on the market these days, it's just about making money now, that there's so many on the market that are useless, like they don't even make it past the acidity of your stomach. And they're just either a waste of money because they're not helpful at all, or they give very little benefit, that you could get so much more benefit from sauerkraut, which you can buy a jar of, you know, for less than $10, or make your own for much cheaper. But there are some good companies out there that have good quality probiotics that have been shown in human studies to actually confer certain benefit in the body in certain cases. That's very, very individualized, and that's something that really you need to work with someone who's qualified to provide guidance on that. And number 6, eating while stressed or distracted. As I said, we do not want to eat while stressed or distracted, because then it's not just that we might end up with like a tummy ache or bloating because we're not properly digesting our food, but improper digestion also means improper absorption of nutrients. So I forgot to mention at the beginning, but the whole point of digestion is so that we're able to absorb the beneficial nutrients from our food. So when we're not digesting food properly, this is one of the reasons that a lot of people with digestive issues have low energy, is because they're not properly absorbing B12, also not properly absorbing calcium, iron, and that also, it's not just from, you know, eating while stressed, but or relying on antacid pills, like just so many different things going on that can affect the quality of our digestion. So there are other mistakes out there, but these are the common ones I wanted to share. If, you know, when I work with individuals one-on-one, then I'm able to gather more information by asking more questions to really see what other unique mistakes an individual might be making that could be harming their gut health. But knowledge is power, but without action, it's useless. So I want you to remember that it's not going to help you if you try to take everything that you learned from today and just apply it. Maybe for 1 week it will work, but it's not going to be sustainable. So I encourage you to take 1 to 3 things from today and slowly start to incorporate them. And the number one I recommend is focusing on diversity of plants in your diet. So try that 30-day plant diversity challenge. And also, if you have constipation, that's another place to start. Definitely get your bowels moving normally. And I would also like to tell you about my new program, the Gut Power Program. So Again, if you take what I shared with you today and you apply it, I am certain that you will get incredible, incredible results, both in terms of like helping with any disease you might already have in your body, or just preventing disease in the future. And, you know, having more energy, helping to lose weight. So taking that information and applying it on your own will have incredible results. And I am happy to have shared that with you for free, because I want as many people as possible to have this information that is literally life-changing. And I hope that you will share this presentation with others that you know, that you love, and or just, you know, either share the presentation or share what you learned. However, I also know that for a lot of people, knowledge alone is not enough. Me personally, like, this is why I'm constantly working with coaches myself, because we also need accountability, need that individualized support and guidance. And then, of course, I could only share so much in this 1-hour masterclass, but there's so much more that goes into optimizing our gut health and addressing underlying root cause of digestive pain and other health issues. So if you're interested in having my support and going deeper, then I would love to invite you to have a clarity call with me. So I will be sharing with you in my email a link to schedule a 30-minute clarity call where we can discuss. I'll share more about my program and just discuss whether it's the right fit for you. So it's a 12-week health coaching plus functional nutrition program that's going to help to optimize your gut, ditch digestive issues if you have any, diet overwhelm, and just help you to feel and look your best. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate that you invested in yourself by taking the time to watch this presentation. And I really genuinely, I want you to have the best health ever. So please, you know, I would love to work with you one-on-one, have you join my program, but also please keep in touch and reach out anytime with questions and let me know how I can be of service. So, bye.